Hello, everyone, and welcome back to another panel, this time on a topic of green cities, soon to be reality or pure utopia. The European Union is investing 500 billion euro in the next 5 years to transform the bloc's economy to become more sustainable. And as transport and energy industries are among the largest contributors to the climate crisis, this is affecting how we all live. How is the push to green economy aligned with tenants' needs, and how can green cities positively impact all residents' lives? These are the questions our panelists are going to discuss with me right now. And let me introduce them one by one. First is Juliet Phillips. Juliet is a senior policy advisor at E3G, the global think tank that's working to accelerate the transition to a low carbon economy. So welcome on stage, Juliet. Hi.
Hi there.
Hi. And also joining us will John Bootland. John is CEO of the Passivhaus Trust, the official body for promoting and protecting a Passivhaus standard in the UK. So please welcome on stage, John.
Good morning, everyone, or good afternoon.
Hello, John. Welcome. Also joining us is Alex Schoch. Alex is the head of flexibility at Octopus Energy, the leading renewable energy provider. Please welcome on stage, Alex.
Hello, thanks for having me.
Hi, Alex. Thanks for joining us. And last but not least, we'll have Sam Carson joining us. Sam is the head of sustainability at CBRE, the leading full-service real estate services and investment organization in the world.
Hi, everybody. Great to be here.
Good to have you on board. And before we dive into our conversation, we have a poll set up for the audience. So everyone watching, please click on Slido in your chat panel, and in Slido choose poll and help us to answer a question that we would like you to contribute with your opinion, which is, how much time do you expect people will be spending in cities after the pandemic in the long run? More time than before the pandemic, as much time as before the pandemic, or less time before the pandemic? So please participate in the poll, and while you do, we'll kick off our conversation, then we'll have a look at the results in between. So everyone, are you excited for an exciting topic?
It'll be great.
Yeah, good. I am. So let's dive in, should we? My first question is, as the UK sets its sights on a carbon neutrality goal, what do you predict will be the biggest changes in urban landscapes, and why? Whoever wants to start first.
Well, I think, so one of I'm actually a part of the valuations team, not overall CBRE, but one of the things that we're looking for is to see how the cost of carbon will be incorporated into building prices and rents. And I think that that's going to drive a lot of change throughout the sector, as there's a push by tenants to move toward greener buildings. And that's going to create probably a lot of changes in the urban environment, but make buildings greener, and I think that'll make it more exciting.
Yeah, I'm happy to come in next. The decarbonisation of our built environment poses one of the knottiest challenges, really, for getting on track to hit the UK's new climate target, with emissions from buildings representing around 23% of the total. We need to make really significant gains on energy efficiency and heat decarbonisation to get on track. Currently, over 85% of our homes are attached to the fossil gas grid. So this is going to need a real shift towards electrification. We've got a new target to install 600,000 heat pumps per year by 2028. But really, if we're to get on track to hit the Climate Change Committee's carbon budget, we need to go even faster than that. So it's a huge step up in the current scale of action and pace that we're seeing. And in parallel, we really need to scale skills and supply chains as well to get on track to meeting these targets, which has real benefits as well for green jobs and the green economy. And just finally, we also need a big shift towards renewables and more flexible energy systems as well to make sure that the transition is green and affordable.
It's interesting though, isn't it? If I just chip in for a second, I'm not sure how much people will see of that. So improving the fabric of the building, for example, or improving the services in the building is kind of quite a hidden thing. It's absolutely essential that it happens. It's got to happen. That's kind of hidden. So what might be more visible might be the kind of transport impacts and the energy supply impacts, I think. So it's pretty good that someone from Octopus is here, so Alex is good on this. So looking at where the energy supply will come from, 6 times as much electricity going to be needed. You know, how's that going to be distributed around? Is it going to be all locally produced? Is it all going to be local renewables, battery storage, but also the kind of cars, electric cars and traffic-free streets. I think those things will be much more visible, maybe, than the changes to the building. Even though they will change a lot, I'm not sure how visible it will be.
I think that's a very interesting point, John. If we just look at the examples in London of the explosion of bike lanes in the past year, that has had a very marked impact on the kind of immediately visible urban landscape. And while electrification of heat is definitely going to happen, I don't think, I would agree with you that it's not going to be a visible change, or probably not as visible. I think EV charging infrastructure is definitely going to kind of continue to grow, especially as we kind of move into mass market EV adoption. I'm just kind of thinking that last year, 20% of all registered cars in the UK were EVs, up from 3% just 4 years ago. We're kind of moving into the space, especially in built-up environments where on-street parking and EV charging becomes more and more critical. And that's something that we're actively working to solve at Octopus, as well as delivering 100% renewable energy to a much more more demanding customer group who are all wanting to make sure that they have 100% green renewable energy.
Great, thank you. I just want to see how you're doing if I'm gone, but all went well. So let's move to the next question. And before we do, as a reminder to the audience, we have a poll running live. If you select Slido in your chat box and within Slido, then select poll, you can participate in the poll where we're asking how much time do you expect people will be spending in cities after the pandemic in the long run. And also within Slido, you can click Q&A and start asking questions and upvote existing questions that we'll take from you and ask the panel. The next question from my end is, how do we tackle energy efficiency and sustainable architecture in a mass market? Sam, you want to say something? I can see.
Well, I can't wait to hear John's thoughts on this, to be honest. So I'm going to wait for that.
All right, John, here you go.
Okay, I don't think it's too hard, actually. I think we can do this. Well, certainly on the new buildings side, we can do this anyway. So the Passivhaus standard is one way of getting to very close to net zero on your energy efficiency side for new buildings. And it really should be done. People should be building to that standard or its equivalent now. We've got over 60 local authorities in the UK are building housing to that standard, or have built a scheme. Sorry, already built a scheme, already started a scheme to that standard. So new build, I don't think is too difficult. And we're talking, 600 units or 400 units at a time. People are doing big projects, so that's all possible. I think the retrofit side, and dealing particularly with existing homes, is much trickier. I think some buildings are quite easy to deal with. So blocks of buildings are quite easy, but when you look at the traditional Victorian and Edwardian stock with bay-fronted windows that everybody likes to live in, those are a bit more difficult to do. So it can be done. It can be quite expensive to do really very well, and there has to be some kind of cost-effective point that people can get to make a good improvement, add on an air source heat pump, and then hopefully get as close to our targets. But I'm not sure we've quite cracked how that works on all of those difficult building types yet. A lot of other views.
I think one of the things that people often think is an energy efficient building is going to be a degrade in the quality of experience. And so I want to throw it back at you, John, and ask why that's a myth and why an energy efficient building will actually be more comfortable as well. Sorry to take over your job a bit there, Ken.
No, it's fine. So we have lots of evidence about this, particularly Passivhaus standard, that it is a comfort standard as well as an energy standard. And as you improve the energy efficiency, you will be more comfortable, warmer in winter and cooler in summer. So the insulation keeps you warmer in winter and it also keeps the heat out in the summer. Passivhaus also has ventilation that will give you better indoor air quality. So nice fresh air all the time as well. And we are seeing that does lead to an uplift in value. I can't give you absolute measured numbers that the RACS would sign up to. But I can show you projects where they've got between a 5 and 15% value uplift rather than a cost uplift, a value uplift. And for example, Grosvenor Estates, they've done some Passivhaus retrofits and they sell them at a significant premium because they think that Passivhaus is the leading international standard, and then they sell that to international customers as being a leading standard, and people will pay a significant premium for that. But the evidence at the minute on the value side is site-specific rather than generic across groups of projects. We just don't have enough yet to prove that as a standard.
So now, coming off the back of that point, one of my roles within the valuations team at CBRE is to prove, and I'm a week and a half in, so I'm not there yet. John is coming, but one of the things that's happening is that organizations, tenants, like big corporates have net zero targets or science-based carbon targets. Landlords also have science-based targets or net zero targets. And all of these organizations are going to be looking for real, properly net zero, high-performing buildings in the medium term, within the next 10 years, because otherwise they're not going to hit their targets and their investors are going to be disappointed, and nobody likes disappointed investors or tenants for that matter. So I think what we're going to start to see is differentiation within valuations where Passivhaus or highly energy efficient buildings start to gain that premium properly, and that becomes more visible because there's a reason to see that now with these targets, but also with upcoming legislation and our drive to net zero by 2050. So it's not there yet. 5 to 15% feels like the right back of the envelope calculations that we see here and there and everywhere, but really it's about accelerating the visibility of those premiums and the discounts if they don't have it, that will really differentiate going forward.
Sam, sorry, I'd be very curious to hear also what Alex and Juliet are thinking on this topic.
Yeah, I'm happy to go in. I think it really needs a mixture of different approaches, really. We need to consider both the policy framework, which can provide the regulations and the standards which drive the market. But also there's a huge piece to be done on the funding side as well. And we've been looking at both the public spending offer, but also the private finance side as well. So I'll touch on both of those briefly. On public spending, we recognise that there are upfront costs associated with boosting energy efficiency, and there's a role for government in helping pump prime the market. We say it's a real lost opportunity that the Green Homes grant was removed without a replacement, but there's an opportunity for Treasury to redeem themselves at the forthcoming spending review to offer that incentive to people, as in our view, it's not really fair to have the stick of the regulation coming in without the sweeteners and the incentives, on the other hand, to actually support landlords and other property owners to make those necessary changes. And there's other things that Treasury can do as well. We could look to a green stamp duty, a landlord's capital allowance, 0% VAT on home retrofit services. There's all sorts of things. And then on the private finance side, we're working with the Green Finance Institute Coalition for the Energy Efficiency of Buildings on a suite of different demonstration projects, which can help us get to scale in terms of finance needed to retrofit buildings. And one of the projects we're working on, which might be particularly interesting for people today, is around green rental agreements, where the landlord invests in the fabric of the property. Then the savings, the energy savings, are shared between the landlord and the tenant, helping overcome the split incentive, which is currently seen at the moment. So very happy to speak to anyone interested in that, as we're developing guidelines there for landlords who want to introduce green rental agreements.
Thank you. Alex?
I think, it's I mean, we see increasing energy efficiency in housing stock as absolutely vital and critical, and especially in the context of being a renewable energy supplier. We sold 640 million pounds last year of gas to our customers. In an ideal world, we wouldn't want to sell any next year. Now, that's not, we're going to get there as quickly as possible, but increasing the energy efficiency of the existing housing stock so that all of our customers who want to install electrified heat, and especially air source heat pumps for the retrofit market, can do so as quickly as possible. So, and we see an incredible amount of demand from all of our kind of domestic customers looking to transition.
Mm-hmm. And can we dive a little bit deeper here, like in the changes along the transition? Where do you see benefits and where do you see risk? And what kind of?
Can I ask Alex a quick question? Sorry, about exactly that. So it's about the challenge, really. So the question, the quotes I've heard is that we're going to need 6 times as much capacity in the electricity supply over the next 30 years if we electrify all heat, even if we go through heat pumps, unless we significantly decarbonise, improve the efficiency of the stock. So how can we scale up supply in that way to that kind of level? I'm just looking at your thoughts. It's not something I work on, so it's just really interesting for me.
So I think if we kind of take it down to the fundamentals, an air source heat pump is 4 times more efficient than a gas boiler. And right now, the investment case is skewed because of a asymmetric taxation and levy structure between electricity and gas. And if those two were levelized, you would have an immediate business case to invest into electrified heating. And I mean, we're building up the capacity to generate. We're building up our renewable generation capacity, and the government targets that government have recently issued are very clear. And one of the kind of key things that we then look at beyond that is how do you then manage consumers' heat pumps and EV charging stations and other large load sources so that they are used at the most effective times to benefit not just the consumer and keep prices low, but also the grid, so that our national grid is not paying wind farm operators £40 a megawatt hour to turn off their turbines at periods of overproduction, and really matching that growing volatility and supply and demand at a system level. And that's where our kind of technology focus within the energy space is absolutely critical.
Interesting.
Sam and Juliet, do you have something to add?
Go ahead.
Go on. Yeah, I was just going to say E3G has been doing quite a lot of work on how we can really make full potential of the UK's offshore wind, in particular the North Seas. We've done some economic modelling which points to how if we create a grid, we can minimise the environmental impact, but also boost jobs, particularly kind of in line with the government's levelling up agenda as a good way to boost the green economy. So I feel like a focus on offshore has some real potentials there.
Yeah, absolutely. I think there's lots of technology here, but at the end of the day, it's people's decisions that really matter. And I think that there's a lot of work being done between organizations, and that's really improving a lot as corporates or are trying to decarbonize their own supply chains. And so that I think will play a big role on top of all of these other technical solutions to create the kind of demand to reduce carbon, at least at scale, and improve energy efficiency. So I often look for where the people are interfacing and why they're not talking about this. And I think that they're talking about it more and more, which is really exciting.
The jobs question is very good, isn't it? It's a very good position to be in, I think. The sector that we're working in at the minute is red hot in terms of, we've recruited 5 new people this year already ourselves. And it's really hard to get hold of people. Just the skills and demand for staff is just enormous. So the potential for green jobs, if we improve the efficiency of the existing stock in the UK, 28 million homes, that's a lot of work. There's a lot of people to be given interesting jobs.
Okay, so my next question would be, what do you expect happening in the next decade? And I'm inclined to have a look at the poll at this stage and see what the audience is thinking about the question: how much time do you expect people will be spending in cities after pandemic in the long run? And so we have 47% of everyone who voted said they expect people to spend less time as before the pandemic. 42% voted they expect people to spend as much time as before the pandemic, and only 11% voted they expect people to spend more time in the pandemic. So the overwhelming majority expects people to spend either the same time before or less. What's your expectation on this, and what's your expectation for what will happen next decade?
Well, if we look at the city has become a lot nicer over the past year. I think my old office used to be on Regent Street, and the city works that have gone there, reducing the amount of traffic, but increasing the public realm and making it a nicer place. I think that's going to be what cities need to do to draw people in and maintain relevance. But you can see how the urban landscape is just going to become just really pleasant. And as vehicles go down, or Alex's team decarbonizes them and makes it easier for electrical vehicles, it's going to be just a lot more pleasant. And so that's exciting. Now, whether or not we'll go into the office or whether or not we'll just find ourselves in French-style cafes watching the world go by, I guess that's open for debate. But I think that the city has a really great opportunity to be a really, a wonderful place that is more in tune with nature and more in tune with the environment.
Yeah, I mean, I'd have to echo Sam's comments. I think we're going to see a continued kind of decongestion of especially the CBD and mixed use areas. I think we're going to see we're definitely going to see an increase in electrification of transport, not just of passenger vehicles, but I think public transport, road public transport. I think the quality that is going to give to the urban environment is going to be substantial in terms of a reduction in noise pollution as well as air quality. So I think the urban environment is going to benefit substantially in terms of a quality of living based on the green transition.
Juliet, what are your thoughts?
I suppose, to kind of echo some comments from earlier around the big challenge we face in decarbonising the built environment and getting on track for climate targets means that we do need a rapid shift this coming decade. We're likely to see a significant reduction in fossil fuel heating, huge boost in heat pumps, and also real questions around how do we pay for this and innovation, which can help bring down the costs as well as support for skills and supply chains. So it feels like it's going to be a decade of action to get on track for climate targets.
Mm-hmm. John, how do you see it next decade?
It's just it's a really interesting moment, isn't it? With coming out of the COVID crisis and hitting the climate challenge, and everyone suddenly recognising the climate challenge all at the same time. And I wonder whether it might actually be a good thing, in that a lot of the buildings in the city centres will have to be repurposed for different uses. And if you're trying to improve their energy efficiency, then why would you do that if everything is just running as normal, or it's more difficult to build in change programs? But if you're going to have to change uses anyway, and they're going to have to be repurposed and refunctioned, then that might give us an opportunity to go in and make the improvements that we need. So actually, the next decade, it might just have come together in quite a nice way to help make that change happen very quickly. Being an optimist, that might be possible.
I think just one, I mean, this is a bit tangent, but one thing I'm fascinated about seeing is the kind of rapid focus on decarbonizing construction, and not just from a materials perspective, but also actually equipment. And there, I think Norway's made some very interesting strides in looking at how they're actually decarbonizing the full value chain when it comes to urban development, down to electrification of heavy equipment, material usage. I mean, of course, the significant explosion in the use of wood as a core construction material. But I think that's also something that it will impact the urban environment, because it should also lead to kind of a better experience of renovation and new construction.
Thank you all. So we have about 9 minutes left, and there's already a few questions in Slido. I would like to take them, if you don't mind. And the first question that has a few upvotes is, how can operators of rental properties balance sustainability goals, demand from renters for all-inclusive rents, which include unlimited utilities? Anyone? Where's the follow-up question?
That's a really good question, because all-in utilities are quite interesting. All of a sudden, the landlord has every incentive to get this right, because it basically hits their bottom line. And we've seen that in the student accommodation sector in particular, where getting students to turn off their PlayStations and actually study actually does improve profitability of these organizations. And so that's where these relationships start to really matter, where you've got people talking and actively working together and finding ways to convince people to do efficiency and really creating incentives around it, because ultimately it works out better. Now, I'm not sure if that's necessarily the right business model for real estate. That's not what I'm saying, but I do think that it is interesting to see what happens when you've got a real focus on those incentives to get it right.
If I just dip in a second, I would say this, wouldn't I? But I would say you need to build a passive house. So if you want to be sure of what your heating bills are going to be, if you build a passive house, you know what it'll be. They will be very, very, very low, and they will be what you predict them to be. We can't deal with the energy demand from consumers and how they use their PlayStations, but certainly it gives you certainty to the landlords of the heating demand, no matter what approach they take.
Yeah, I'm happy to jump in on this one as well, and just give another plug to the green rental agreement template that we've been working on, which will provide a commitment in writing between the landlord and the tenant that says that they both want to reduce the energy consumption and sharing the energy savings. We faced some issues when we've been drafting this around the Tenants Fee Act, but the solution proposed is an all-inclusive rent, which enables the landlord to take their share of the energy savings and for the savings to be shared with the tenant through an all-inclusive rental cost. And ultimately, we hope this model will provide the landlord with the incentive to invest in the property, as they'll receive some of the benefits from the work, whereas the tenant will live in a better quality property and the bills cost less than if the landlord hadn't made that investment. And we're about to go to consultation with the document, so very happy to share it with anyone who's interested in learning more about that.
It's really interesting. I mean, from our perspective as an energy supplier, it's definitely an area that we would be, happy to explore further in working with landlords to develop the tariffs that would make sure that is a viable kind of proposition for both the landlord and the tenant. And here I'm thinking in terms of we have the largest at Octopus. We have the largest number of customers on smart tariffs, where you get different prices at different times of day, whether it's a cheap overnight rate for EV charging or even a very dynamic rate where the cost of energy changes every a half hour tied to the macro wholesale market. And there we've seen the ability to shift behavior and consumption as extremely strong. And that's purely through price signaling of these tariff structures. And that's opened up a whole new layer of opportunity and discussion with government on how price signals can help shift around demand for when electricity is the greenest, and that can be extrapolated into what is best for a tenant landlord kind of structure as well.
And I can vouch for that because I've that Octopus Agile tariff helped me shift all of our dishwasher activity into the middle of the night, and that's the kind of thing that I think is really exciting, and it provides data. And one of the big issues between landlords and tenants is the sharing of data. Tenants not sharing the data to the landlord. The landlord doesn't even know that there's a problem, and I think that that's probably what Juliet's framework must be helping doing, because when they collaborate, when they work together and they're trying to address this as a shared challenge, that's a values discussion, first of all, and that benefits both the landlord and the tenant. It's one of the few opportunities for a non-adversarial sort of discussion between these two parties, which is not common, and so there's an opportunity here for win-wins all over the place. But it's just putting in these structures of communicating and sharing and providing data together.
But isn't this going to be solved by batteries and intelligent energy management systems within 2 to 3 years? Isn't that going to be the case?
I think it depends on how much we want to pay for it, or through either directly or through the non-energy costs included in our bills. We could go and deploy batteries everywhere, but I think there's multiple types of solutions that all that have equal value. And
Alex, I hate to interrupt. It's just there's so many questions. I want to take a few more, and there are specifically some I addressed to you actually. So I'll take two at the same time, which is how do we make sure building materials feature in the decarbonization of buildings? And then the next question is, Juliet and Alex, how can companies work together to make renewable energy for heating a reality, since a lot of buildings are poorly insulated in the UK? I feel like those questions are connected.
Sure. So, in terms of how we can make... Sorry, can you just repeat the second question?
Yeah, how do we make sure building materials feature in the decarbonization of buildings? And the second question is, how can companies work together to make renewable energy for heating a reality, since a lot of buildings are poorly insulated in the UK?
Well, to take a leaf out of John's book, I think they should all be Passivhaus, retrofitted Passivhaus standards.
You can't do them all to that. You can't quite get there for everything, but you need to decarbonise the heat demand, or reduce the heat demand first to a relevant level for the relevant property. And choosing the right materials to do that is absolutely essential. Whether that's materials that can breathe and deal with moisture problems, so you don't get condensation problems. That's one thing. Or off-gassing of pollutants coming out of the materials. You need to addressing the materials question is absolutely critical. But if you put a heat pump into a non-retrofitted existing building that's got huge heat demand, it's just not going to work very efficiently, and it's not going to provide enough heat, and then the home's going to be cold, and then no one's going to be happy, and then low carbon retrofit's going to get a terrible name. So we can't do that. You've got to address the materials and the heat demand in the building. You've got to address the fabric and reduce the demand to an appropriate level, and then whack in a heat pump or whatever your heat source is to address the heating provision. But you've got to do that first. You've got to get the demand down first.
And as we're unfortunately coming to an end of our time, I would like to get one more question and a quick answer from each of you. Could be just a sentence. It's an intriguing question. Tesla changed the perception of electric cars with their insane acceleration and autopilot. What's necessary to make CO2 neutral homes equally exciting?
I would say Passivhaus, but it doesn't look exciting. It could just be anything, any kind of design.
We need a really fast heat pump, I guess. A really shiny heat pump, maybe. I don't know what the equivalent.
I don't think it's that. I think it's lifestyle. Lifestyle. So you're selling comfort and well-being and better indoor air quality, and better connection to your local neighbourhood, and green, and better transport and walking. So you've got to sell lifestyle, I think. That's what it's going to be. Green lifestyle.
I think it's insights and data. If I think back, Tesla basically changed the conception of an EV from being a golf cart or an ugly kind of to a slick design that you actually wanted to own, and the powertrain was secondary. So I think in terms of decarbonizing heat and renewable lifestyle, it's about data and showing that in a very clean, slick, modern way through lots of interactivity and connectivity.
I guess from my side, for a lot of people, Tesla is just still a completely unaffordable proposition, and we need to make sure that the transition of buildings is affordable. So I think we need a real focus on the finance side, both the public finance, engaging with Treasury to make sure that they're putting in place those grants and incentives that are needed for all homes, but also on the private finance side and looking at these innovative new solutions and services which can help all tenures.
I think green buildings should be an investment class, and people should know that they're going to make money out of it. They need to see that. They need to know that their EPC of an A, because they did a passive house, is going to fetch more on the market, and be comfortable with that investment. I think that will be really exciting, and that'll draw together the finance, the smart data, and the shiny heat pump and the passive house. All of that will come together because people will go, "This is a green building and eco home, so pay more for it."
And that's nice ending words. Unfortunately, we're out of time. Thank you very much, Juliet, Sam, John, and Alex, joining for this very interesting discussion. And for the audience, coming up next in a few minutes will be kind of a line in the future about homes in 2030. How will innovation technology change the way we run our households? Thank you very much for joining this session, and see you in a bit.